Hey, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, and this show is all about demystifying crowdfunding and breaking it down for you and unearthing some of the best practices, tactics, techniques, and tools out there so you can really smash it. You can have a really good success with your project and your campaign. And kind of like the reason why I want to start this show also is to keep my finger on the pulse when it comes to new ways of raising money, new companies that are coming about. This is also for me to a certain degree, but I think that it's also really important to change up some of the tried and true educational sources that are out there, because if you ask someone, how do I get funding for a company, they'll tell you go get a bank loan. Maybe nowadays they'll say go check out Kickstarter. But one thing that no one is talking about is equity crowdfunding. I swear, no one is talking about this, despite the fact that WeFunder, Start Engine, Republic, and a bunch of other companies have raised over $100 million in 2019 when it comes to equity crowdfunding. Think about that. $100 million has been raised for startup companies just like you, and no one is referencing that number, and no one is really sharing with you how to go about doing that. So it's a window of opportunity. I think it's something that should be on your radar. It's one of the reasons why I have this new series going about equity crowdfunding, because today I brought on an individual, a founder, who raised over $230,000 on WeFunder, and he's going to share with you exactly how he did it. This is for a very innovative company as well. So it basically is giving soccer fans the opportunity to own a part of a European soccer club. Think about that. Traditionally, only rich people could own a soccer team or own a baseball team, own a football team or something like that. Unless you were a super rich person, you would have no ability to participate in that arena. But nowadays, by using regulations like regulation crowdfunding, you can actually raise money for a very novel concept just like this. The other interesting thing is that, as a sports watcher, rather than just watching a game and seeing someone win, seeing someone lose, which is exciting, obviously, but you can have a financial stake in that. It takes sports betting to a completely new level. And in my opinion, it just changes the game, no pun intended. It really makes you look at sports in a new way. So this is such a unique model, and I really want to get into that today, as well as how you can incorporate this into your own business. If you have a startup company and you maybe want to do a Kickstarter and then do an equity crowdfunding campaign, or you just want to go straight to the equity route, this episode will help prime you so that you know what to expect going into it, as well as some of the best practices out there to raise six figures and do that initial seed round. Now, when it comes to this, I have a free course out there called the free equity crowdfunding course that you can go to at crowdcrux.com/equity course. So that's crowdcrux.com/equity course, crowdcrux.com/equity course. I'm not very creative with my names, so go there, and you can opt in. You can get some emails from me, some free content on how equity crowdfunding works. If you want to invest in your education a little bit and pick up a paperback copy or an Audible copy of my book, Equity Crowdfunding Explained, that goes heck a lot more in depth, particularly when it comes to the regulations and rules. So if you want to pick up an Audible version, that's crowdcrux.com/equity audio. Or you could just go to crowdcrux.com/equity, and that will take you to the paperback version available on Amazon. But without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode and learn how this individual raised six figures on WeFunder. Are you looking for help with the fulfillment side of your rewards on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or any other crowdfunding website? Fulfillment is literally the gold standard when it comes to crowdfunding reward fulfillment. These guys will help you ship out your products, your packages, your orders to all of your customers and your backers. They've been working in this industry for a really long time. I totally vouch for their services, and they'll even do things like answer simple questions for you on fulfillment and shipping and figuring out how to get your products into the hands of your customers in the easiest way possible. If you're interested in learning more about them, you can go to fulfillright.com or crowdcrux.com/fulfillright, and that will take you to them. Again, that is FULFILLRITE.com.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Hey, Mark, could you just kind of preface, for those out there that haven't checked out the campaign yet and are just listening, what is this project for, and what are you going to do with the funds that you're raising?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we're on WeFunder, WeFunder.com/fan-owned club. And what we have done is we have taken a European soccer team and we're essentially crowdfunding it. But we're targeting it specifically at, uh, you know, anybody in the world can invest, obviously, but we're targeting it towards U.S. soccer fans, U.S. investors from that standpoint. And so while the club itself is in Austria, we have a U.S. base where we're creating a ton of English language content around the team so that people can follow it from pretty much anywhere in the world. And the precipice of the idea is it's really 3 years in the making, and I came at it as a soccer fan myself, living in the States. And I had always been to soccer matches and seen, these full stadiums of fans that were essentially funding these clubs. But at the end of the day, there is always this separation between the fans and what actually goes on with a pro sports team. And so I said, these fans are essentially the ones that are funding it, and there's got to be a better way to own a team, because as we know in the States, all the sports teams are owned by millionaires and billionaires. And I said, basically, what if we take a sports team, in this case a soccer team, and we split it up into a bunch of little pieces, and we basically sell off the pieces, and we give these fans true ownership into a team, and at the same time we give them just tremendous behind the scenes access so that they can follow the club in ways that they've never been able to follow the teams that they are invested in in the past. And so we're creating a totally unique experience, a new way to watch sports, and giving these people a vested interest. So as the team does well, they have the opportunity to potentially benefit from that as well. And so that's kind of the precipice of it. And with the equity crowdfunding laws with the way that they are, that gave us the opportunity to do this.
Totally, yeah. What I love about that too is there's such a huge sports betting community as well, right? In the States, like it's so much more fun to watch sports when you have a stake in it, kind of. And this is kind of like an interesting way to capitalize on that, where you're not only rooting for your team, but if they do well, you also kind of benefit a little bit financially from that.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. And, I've had people that have reached out to me and have said, this really changes the way that I watch the sport. And they weren't necessarily expecting that, I guess, when they got into it. But as they've become involved, it just takes, the interest to a whole new level, like you said. And the other side of that, too, is, we've had some of our investors that have said, this is a totally different type of investment, where I'm not checking the ticker to see how my investments are doing. I'm checking the scoreboard and the standings and all that kind of stuff to see how my investment's doing. And so they've said from an investment standpoint, it's a whole new way to track your investment too, by watching the matches and keeping up on what's going on.
I mean, especially when your wife or your girlfriend is also complaining that you're watching too much sports. now you have a valid reason, right?
Exactly. And a reason to come to Austria too. You're like, hey, we got to take a trip over there now. And so it's a bucket list kind of destination, and it's a whole nother excuse to turn it into a trip too.
Yeah, totally. What were you doing? You mentioned working on this for like 3 years. What were you doing before this? Like, do you have a background in management or in business? Like, how did you get involved with this?
I'm sorry, you cut out for me for a second there. Can you repeat
Yeah, sure.
that
Do you have a background in like management or business, or have you done startups before? Like, what is your background?
I think you asked about my background. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur by trade, and so I do have a master's in sports administration, and have worked in sports. I consider myself an entrepreneur and have started different companies throughout the years and things like that. And so I kind of saw an opportunity here to kind of mix the two, if you will. And when the idea first came to me, I I kind of focus grouped it with, some of my friends to make sure that I wasn't crazy. And I was like, hey, is this something, that you guys would be interested in, investing in and being a part of? And, the response was, overwhelming as far as the people that were like, yeah, I would totally do that. And so, it didn't take long to realize that I think that this was something that, could really fly. And here we are.
When it comes to equity crowdfunding, had you done that before with any ventures, or is this your first campaign? And how did you find out about equity crowdfunding?
So no, this is my first experience with it, and to be honest, I knew that crowdfunding was popular now, and I knew that there were people that were doing it. When I had the idea, I basically went to Google to start with to just kind of see if this thing, could be done that way. And I just educated myself on, the equity crowdfunding laws and all of that. The initial thought was to go Reg A plus. And, we started down that path. I interviewed maybe 5 or 6 lawyers that specialize in crowdfunding. We finally settled on Jillian Sidoti out in California, who has helped us through that process. And as we got more into that, we were actually approached by a different crowdfunding platform, and they wanted to know if we would be interested in doing CF, kind of in a parallel path while we were pursuing the A plus approval. And so we started talking to them, and it didn't quite work out with that particular platform, but that kind of sparked the interest in the CF, and we did settle on WeFunder, who has been great to work with, and we started our CF campaign with them about 6 weeks ago, and have started down that road. As we know, there's been some rumblings about the CF limits getting raised here potentially pretty soon, from 1.07 million to 5 million.
That'd be a game changer if that happens.
It would be huge, absolutely huge. We're still pursuing the A plus right now. But if the CF does get raised, we've had discussions about whether or not we'll continue down the A plus path or not. But we're so close. It's kind of like one of those things that we put so much into it that we kind of want to finish that off as well.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to one of these raises, like, I don't know if you've done a raise before from angel investors or VCs. What goes into this equity campaign? Like, did you have to promote it? How did people find out about it? The investors you already have.
So I haven't done any of the VC or angels so far, and when we promoted ours, we kind of looked at it as I think we're in a little bit of a unique situation because we've tapped into soccer fans as opposed to traditional investors so far. That's kind of been our target. We have Trey Fitzgerald on our team who has been in soccer marketing and media for 25 years. And so, he's been a tremendous resource as far as, getting the word out in the U.S. soccer community so far. We've been fortunate enough to have been featured in The Athletic, publication. Forbes has done an article on us, and so we've gotten some media because of the unique nature of what we've done. And then we've been pretty much grassroots. Social media, Twitter has played a big role, and just really pushing our investment through the soccer community first and foremost. And so we haven't really ventured down the road of traditional investors to this point, other than the WeFunder network of existing clients that they have that have kind of tapped into us on their platform.
When you're doing the campaign and you're like announcing it, right? Are you doing that posting on Facebook? Are you emailing people? How are you getting the word out?
Kind of all of the above. So, we're really active on Facebook and Twitter. We do a lot of publicity there. We have created a decent sized mailing list from people that have signed up through having seen us in the various articles, that have a pretty good readership. I've been on some soccer specific podcasts throughout the country as well, just really promoting the idea that way through to soccer fans in general. And then we've started doing some paid advertising as well through an ad agency that is owned by soccer fans, actually. And so we've kind of partnered with them and have gotten a pretty good return on our investment there so far. They keep saying we're doing significantly higher than the industry standard. Because of the unique nature of what we're doing, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
So a little bit of everything.
Very
so
cool.
Far.
Very cool. Did it surprise you the way that it's been kind of catching on? Or, obviously you had spotted this trend a long time ago and really planned this entire project. Are you surprised though with the way that people are leaving comments and some of them, I'm looking through the reviews here, and some people are saying I love sports. While investments are risky, I couldn't pass on being a part-time owner of a soccer team with good leadership and lots of promise. Fuck it, why not? Excited to be a part of something unique. You're getting a lot of good comments there.
Yeah, I mean, I love reading those. It's when I first wanted to create this, that was my whole goal, was to create a unique experience for fans, first and foremost. And so to see so many people latch on, it's been just amazing. We have a really good team in place that has, done an awesome job. Lots of people that have been involved, with soccer, as their livelihood, have really helped push this. But was I surprised? Out of all the times we could have launched this, we launched this in the middle of April, which is obviously right in the middle of the whole virus pandemic. And so 3 years in the making, I could have never have envisioned that we would have launched, in this kind of environment. But we did. And we said to ourselves, there's a lot of people out there that are struggling right now, but there's also a lot of people out there that are looking for positives and things to do and things that can really unite people. And so, we kind of took that approach to it. And, I've had several people that have said to me, to raise $250,000 in 6 weeks in the middle of, one of the most concerning economic times, of recent memory is just amazing. And so I really, give a lot of credit to our team, to all the people that have invested so far, that have believed in this project. We get people that have commented to me, they're like, oh, I'm spending my stimulus check on this, and things like that. And so it's humbling to see so many people that are really taken onto it. But it's a big responsibility as well to make sure that, that we, live up to those people's expectations and what we've promised them.
I want to talk a little bit about that responsibility, because you also had, it looks like you raised a bunch of money in 2019, right? I'm not sure if it's debt or how you were able to collect that together, but I think it's important to always have some skin in the game, and just to give listeners an idea of what you've been doing to make this happen. How did you guys raise that initial round?
A couple of different ways. So, the founders, we have invested, our own money to start off with. None of us have taken a salary thus far. So there's been a lot of, sweat equity, if you will, in the company. The friends and family, through that network, we have raised a good amount of money that way as well before we ever launched. And so it's just been, working the phones, grassroots, our own networks, people that believe in us and believe in the project. We haven't gone to banks or VCs or anything like that thus far. We're trying to preserve the fan-owned club mentality where it really is, a bunch of people that share a common vision and just a common excitement for the sport. And I've had people, we're trying to do some things where we can really unite the people that have invested so far, because they want to meet other people through this. They're like, that's one of their reasons for wanting to get involved, is because they want to meet new friends through this venture and be able to go over to Austria and sit down and have a beer with them and watch a game, with new friends. So that part of it has been really cool.
I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. Also, the idea that you are actually owning a small part of a team is like, that's unheard of, right? Because in order to do that before, you had to be a really rich guy,
Exactly.
And it's just like, it's not a thing I've ever heard of before.
Yeah, and especially in the U.S., all the teams are owned by millionaires and billionaires, and so we couldn't really do this in the States. European soccer has promotion relegation, which basically means that the team that wins the league gets promoted up to the next league, and the team that finishes last gets relegated down. And so we do have upward mobility in European soccer, which is kind of a foreign concept to people in the States. It might be like a AAA baseball team winning the league and getting promoted to the major leagues type of atmosphere. And so, from a business standpoint, it was to buy this team, in the third division, buy it low, invest this money into the team to get it promoted so that it gets bumped up to the second league and eventually the first league, so that it becomes more valuable at that point, and the investors, can have a stake in that as well. As it does get promoted and go up. That's something that everybody gets to enjoy the benefits of that, and that they can be along for the ride, the whole way through.
Even better, yeah. So you raised like nearly $700,000 last year, which is insane. Do you have any tips for other people out there that have never done this before and now they have to go and raise money from like friends and family or acquaintances? Do you have any advice? Because a lot of people might shy away from that and be like, I don't want to like hit up my friends, or I don't know if this is a good idea. Like, what advice do you have for other entrepreneurs in that stage?
It's, I guess my number one tip would be, don't underestimate how long it can take. I had this notion that this was going to be a quick process, and it hasn't. And so, be patient, be persistent, be willing to stick it out. But as far as friends and family, I think, the thing that we just tried to stick to is, this is a really cool opportunity, and it's a chance to do something with people that we like and that we want to share this with. And that's been the precipice for a lot of our investors, is it's like, hey, let's do this together. I want you along for the ride. And it's kind of spurned from there, where somebody will invest, and then they'll call their friends and say, hey, I want to do this with you. Why don't you invest as well? And so, we've kind of been able to create a really cool network, that way, just with the social aspect of it and kind of the community aspect of it, and just being able to share it with friends and family. And I know it can be difficult to call up people like that, that we have a relationship with and everything. But, everybody's different. And as we got talking into it with people that we know, some people were like, hey, I trust you, here's your money. Other people were like, walk me through it. How does it work? And, other people were like, what is this experience going to be like? And so everybody was different, but, it was just a really cool experience, all the way around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When it comes to the actual like equity crowdfunding campaign, do you have any advice to impart in the way of preparing for it, or something that you wish you knew when you were in the stages of just getting it together? Do you have any advice there?
I'll go back to who don't underestimate how long it takes,
Okay.
because especially the A plus process, if you're going A plus, it can be, it can take longer than you expect.
It's a lot more
It's
costly
just,
too, right? With A plus.
it is, yeah. So, I mean, the lawyer fee, obviously, depending on which lawyer you go with, that can vary. But you do get that higher ceiling, which is kind of what we were going for at the time, with the CF only being the 1.07 million. Like we said, if that gets bumped up, that's a big game changer. But I can't say enough about the people at WeFunder who have really helped, the process. Johnny and Susanna there have been really great to work with, and they were really, we had a lot of our documents already in place because we were in the A plus process, and so that kind of streamlined, going through to the CF. But
They have a lot of templates too, right? You can use and such for regulation CF.
They do, yeah. They have it pretty streamlined. It's templates as far as contracts go. The setup of the website is really straightforward as far as getting all the information uploaded, and all that kind of stuff was really seamless. The whole processing, they take care of all of the payments, the credit card fees, all of that kind of stuff is just all under one umbrella. And so it's really really a straightforward process. And if somebody's looking to get started going with equity crowdfunding, that's probably your first call that I would recommend is talk to those guys. It's gonna work for the majority of businesses out there, unless you're just looking for something a lot bigger, and you want to try to do it alone with a lawyer.
Now, when it comes to investing in the fan-owned company club, like, I understand the idea of becoming a part of the team, bonding with people. When it comes more to like, okay, how are we going to get an ROI on the investment? Is it going to be like distributions? Is it going to be someday you might sell the team to one of these other rich people? Or like, how do you, get the investment back?
Yeah, that's all potential answers there. And I think I'll go back to what we had talked about before, with the goal of making the club profitable, and increasing the value by getting it promoted. And so once the team goes from third league to second league, there's a big jump in value. As far as there was a club last year in the second league that sold for 13 million euros. And then as you promote from second league to first league, that value jumps again. And so, by getting in now and building out the, right now everything's getting invested back into the club. And so in the near term, there's no plans to pay any dividends or anything like that. We're just set on putting it all back into the club and getting the club promoted and creating the content to be able to take care of our fan owners and give them that experience. And so right now we're set on doing that. But down the road, yeah, that's definitely the potential, to get your money back that way. One thing that we've talked about doing as well is to create a share exchange, a private share exchange. And so, once we close, sales, the idea is to create a private exchange on the team's website where, the only place for people to be able to get shares at that point would be through our own platform. And people can go on there. Yeah, people can go on there and, they can list them for sale. And, as the club continues to do well and become more popular and everything, the only place to buy shares would be from existing owners. And so then that way the market would drive, the value of the shares at that point. And we would be the only place, where they could be bought and sold essentially.
Okay. So for those that are interested, you can go and check it out at wefunder.com/fan.owned.club to learn a little bit more about that and sort of what you get for your investment. My final question for you here is, going from an idea to a full-fledged business or a product, that's something that a lot of people struggle with, right? And something that's very difficult is like, how do you actually execute on your vision? What's something you found to be common either in your career or in other people you've met along the way to really make that difference? Like, what do you think makes the big difference between someone who's not successful and someone who is?
So I'll be honest, I get a lot of crazy ideas. And that doesn't mean that all of them are something that needs to be pursued. And so, my kind of rule of thumb is it something I'm still thinking about, a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, or is it something that just came and went? And this is something that, that just stuck with me. And, some of the people that have been involved with me as well has kind of said the same thing. When I first approached them about it, it was just something that they just couldn't get out of their head. And so, I think that's the first signal that, maybe it is an idea worth pursuing, for one. And then two is just the commitment to doing it and not be afraid to doing it and trying. And I think, I talk to people that say, oh, I would never be able to do something like that. That's, too big of a risk. And, it just takes the commitment and the confidence in your idea to just, give it a try and go for it. I know that's pretty cliche and it's pretty straightforward, but, It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of this advice. I think like I said, it's a really unique idea. Never seen anything like this before. I think people are going to like it a lot. And I appreciate your time also sharing all those great tips with the audience.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me on, and keep up the good work with the pod.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for joining me here today on this episode where we learned how this individual raised 230 plus 100,000 to give soccer fans the opportunity to be a part of their own soccer team, which I think is a really cool and innovative concept. And it just makes me think like all the new creative ideas that are kind of come out on sites like WeFunder and sites like Start Engine. This is 100% doable. People are doing this every single day. 100 million was raised in 2019. This is happening. Join the bandwagon if you think that your project is going to be a fit for this. And also if you want to incorporate investors, obviously, into your company. Not everyone wants to do that because then you get some micro bosses a little bit, but it's one of those things where you not only get investing in your company, but you also get evangelists and people that are early adopters wanting to support your brand. You can reward those people who have been watching your career success from afar. You can reward your friends and family for being willing to support you in your endeavors. You can give them a little bit of shares in your company. So it's basically Kickstarter for equity. But that being said, I got a lot of great episodes out there on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, other types of crowdfunding. Go and check out the archives of this podcast. In addition, if you want to learn more about WeFunder, you want to learn more about equity crowdfunding, go and check out the free course that I got for you. The link for that course is crowdcrux.com/equity course. crowdcrux.com/equity course. That will take you to a free equity crowdfunding course telling you how crowdfunding works, the regulations you got to know, some of the rules, websites, resources, all that. crowdcrux.com/equity course. And finally, I got a book out there, Equity Crowdfunding Explained. Really good foundation. This is probably, when I was first writing this, there was nothing like this out there. And I continue to say, this is something where if you've never done a campaign before, you got to know this information just to get more and more investors. I mean, it's freaking $10. As long as it gets you one investor, it's going to easily recoup your money. So this is crowdcrux.com/equity will take you to paperback version, and crowdcrux.com/equity audio will take you to the Audible version. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman, and I look forward to seeing you here next week.